You'll get the notification. All right, as Noel taught us, when you go into the breakout room and leave it, everyone will get muted. So just learn that. Noel, did the whiteboard work or did you not try it?
No, it worked. That was
Oh,
great.
cool. All right. I didn't know that would happen. That's good to know.
Stick with me, kid. I'll teach you a few things.
There you go.
Nice.
By the way, I saw Robert smile.
I lost you. I lost what you were saying. It's like for some reason I'm not hearing. I see you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, Dave, you're muted.
I can't hear you either.
Nope.
Mhm.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I said Robert likes that attitude of Noel. Stick with it. Very, very Marina-like. All right. So I don't know what it is. Sometimes when I'm bouncing around, this camera, the microphone goes out. We are recording, so let's get rolling. So we broke out into two rooms. Noel, leader of one room, Bob, the leader of the other room. We had a sales group and we had a prospect group. First meeting, buying and selling life insurance. Bob, start out with some of the things that you as a salesperson, I'm sorry, as a buyer, were hoping to discuss in this Friday night call.
So we all agreed there would be a presentation, some of the basics, right? Talking about different plans, their levels, what they would offer us as a consumer, things like price, talking about the math. Somebody in the group said, what's in it for me? And that could be taken in a couple of different ways, I guess. First being, obviously, there's different organizations out there that could offer us different plans. What's different from those versus what you're offering? Going through the math, cost, how much, how many years, the different levels that we would be paying into. Interested in talking about the why. So what would be the reason for getting life insurance? So we were sort of talking at that point where there's different purposes, different needs to achieve different goals. Somebody else said that in the group, which would in turn, I think, spark individualized questions. So there would be this line of questioning, I think, that the salesperson would come with. They don't even know what they're going to ask yet, because some of those questions are going to come from what we're saying in the conversation. So that was expected. I guess the last thing would be the emotional experience. What's in it for my family, not even just me and my spouse, right? I mean, who's going to benefit from us, potentially getting into this, and ultimately who's going to be the beneficiary, right? Those are some of the main points that everybody covered. There's some more, but maybe that's a good start.
That's actually a great spot to stop, and we'll come back to in a moment, but it's pretty detailed when you start to think about it. In this meeting, how long did you guys want it to last for?
I don't know if anybody talked about that. Is that right? Maybe I missed it. I don't know. No,
I don't think we did either.
I don't think we talked about it.
Well, how long do you want them at your house? Bob, you pick a number.
Ugh. I don't know, 30 minutes.
30 minutes. We're
Yeah,
sticking
get the
with
hell out of
30
my
minutes. And by the way, are you buying that night or are you not buying that night?
Me personally, definitely not buying.
By the way, Samir's not buying either. He was going like this.
Yeah, no.
Noel, give us some of your data points here.
Sure. I'll just run through them real quick. So first off, we would thank them for, and I'm going to look over here because I have two
Yeah, no
screens.
problem.
We're going to thank them for inviting us into their home. We're going to try to get to know them as people, find out what their interests are, make conversations, ask questions, trying to make them as comfortable as possible. We're going to confirm how long they would like us to stay there. Do they have a certain amount of time that they would like this meeting to go? What is their desired outcome at the end? Are they just collecting information, or are they going to purchase? Where are they at in their life? Why do they want life insurance now? How much coverage do you think you're going to need, covering the whole budget question? Is it to pay off your children's college, the mortgage? What assets do you want covered upon, they're passing away? Is it whole life, universal life, term? How much do they understand about life insurance in general, and what assets we need from them? to kind of wrap it up and talk about next
Wow.
steps.
So pretty thorough. And I think the really cool thing is, having done this exercise 100 times in the past, usually there's some more gaps, like not always so conversational. And the fact that you said, hey, that we're going to discuss what the potential outcomes are. Usually there's a lot of pressure in a sales call. There's other outcomes. Did you guys determine, I know you said how much, that you would ask them the question, how much time, and we'll hit that today. But if you were to pick Noelle or somebody from her team, how much time do you think that initial sales call should last to get all that
Probably
information?
30 minutes.
What's that, Nora?
I said probably 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Anybody? Keith is shaking his head. No. How long, Keith? All right.
You're
You're
mute.
muted. You're muted.
It's going to run about an hour because you want to get to know them a little bit. It's going to take 15, 20 minutes just to get past the hellos.
Yeah. So we're, Doug, you look like you were going to say something. No? Or
More or less what he just said.
yeah. So we start to get some of these little gaps. Now we're at the meeting. And now we're starting to ask, how long should we stay? Would that be a little bit of an uncomfortable moment, or pretty comfortable? Like, just imagine.
I think it'd be comfortable, because what if you book it for 6 o'clock at night and you have, they have children and stuff I would ask, is there anything that you have to do later on the evening? I want to make sure that we're utilizing our best use of time. But when I have people come in like to sell us a security system, like they always asked, do you have something to do later on in the evening? Like, how much time? I think it's respectful to the person's time that you're coming into their home, and you want to be respectful of like their time.
Absolutely respectful. What's going on in the buyer's mind when the salesperson asks that question on a Friday night? Think about what really is going on in the buyer's mind when the salesperson says, how much time do you have tonight?
I think it's
still up all the
respectful.
time.
Respectful. What else?
That it's about them, not him.
Then it's about them. Okay. What else could the buyer be thinking?
If they
And
put
I'm not gonna
negatives, if they look at it negatively, they could be thinking, oh, if I tell this guy 2 hours, he's going to stay here 2 hours.
Exactly.
Agree.
How do I get this guy or woman out of my house as soon as possible?
You're kind of asking them to invest in something that they don't know anything about if you ask early on. Like, they don't know who you are. So how do I know, do I want you around for a half hour or an hour or 2 hours?
Yeah, and by the way, all of the answers are correct. There's not one incorrect answer that's been thrown out there. The gap is we don't know what the prospect thinks, and now we're dialing up the pressure. So when we think about,
I would, Dave,
Go
I would,
ahead.
wouldn't you want as a seller to say, listen, I want to be considerate of your time. There's a lot to review and cover. This is our first meeting. Give me a sense of how much time you have available or earmarked for tonight, because I want to tailor my messaging and tailor the conversation to the time you have. So this way you're not putting the pressure on them that you're going to expect them to buy, but just so that you're kind of telling them, what I usually do with clients is I spend an hour and a half before we get to the contracting stage, whatever,
Yeah.
setting up the right expectation, but in a non salesy approach, more of, listen, this is not a quick knee jerk response. We need to kind of chat and blah, blah, blah.
all the right answers. And the question is, how do we we don't want to put pressure on. How do we relieve the pressure actually before the meeting even starts? And because we don't know the prospect's expectations and understanding, by doing it in the moment, we could be creating some friction. Now, by the way, I did not introduce Brandon. Brandon's joining us this week. Brandon, do you want to give a quick intro of yourself, or you in a good spot?
Sure. No, I can. So my name's Brandon Rains. I'm an estate planning attorney. I started my own firm about 5 years ago to try to be as different as possible from the normal attorney-client dynamic. So I help, to make it quick, I help my clients pass on their assets, of course, but I also help them pass on their values, wisdom, life experiences, life lessons, affections, counseling, all those kind of more human-centered things that people care more about. So yeah, that's what I do.
Cool. And in the group we've got, and I'm going to do it really quick and I'm going to get it wrong. We got Stephen, who does ultra net worth life insurance and investment planning. Doug does marketing and actually, maybe I should have you guys do it because I'm gonna get it all wrong. Doug, how would you frame it up? Quick 10-second commercials.
I do messaging and branding strategies for mission-driven organizations.
Steven, give us your 10-second commercial. I did a terrible job.
I work with people like Brandon.
Bingo. On the other side, Brandon, good connection. Samir,
We do marketing and advertising for consumer brands.
beautiful. Robert,
We have an insurance adjusting company and a call center.
Kevin,
Sales performance engineering.
beautiful, cool stuff. Noel,
Can't find my button. We do help out with clinical trials, so pharmaceutical marketing for clinical trials, I would say.
and I'm gonna go Linda and then Pete. Linda, just chime in real quick, say hello.
Yeah, our Craft Health is a full service agency for pharmaceutical life sciences, both from clinical trial all the way through to commercial life cycle.
And Peter,
Oh, I'm on mute. I'm sorry. I'm going to go with what Linda said because I work on the same side as Linda does. I'm national sales director also in that space.
all right, Keith,
I make phone calls and set appointments for people who don't like making phone calls and setting appointments.
Nora, same company.
Yeah, same.
All right, and Bob.
I run a business unit within a executive search firm, manufacturing and supply chain.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. So everybody gets to know each other, and over the weeks, we'll get to know each other a little bit more. But I did want to point out, Brandon, as a lawyer, not to paint the picture this way, Brandon, but how much time do you want to spend with a lawyer? Like, we want to be limited how much time because these could be pressure-filled conversations. So what we're going to talk about is this concept of the upfront contract. I like to say, and I think some of my colleagues would say, really one of the golden nuggets at Sandler, not hard intellectually to understand, hard to execute. It's a hard concept to execute because what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove pressure throughout the entire sales process. That's ultimately what our goal is. Now think about it. When we are out, and I don't care what you do. So we've got an estate attorney. We've got folks that are in the pharmaceutical space. We've got claims from Robert. At the end of the day, we're all salespeople. And what do we typically think about salespeople? No one on this call, but those other salespeople. What do we think about them?
They're annoying.
High pressure car salesman.
Yeah, think about the first time you spoke to me. I mean, what's gonna happen here? High pressure, annoying, and filled with really what I liked about the way you guys were setting it up. I want to understand what's in it for the prospect. Most salespeople are concerned about what's in it for me. So this entire process of the upfront contract, aside from being good technically at setting up a call, it's designed to lower the fear of the prospect by letting them know in advance what's going to happen to them. That's real. So we're going to be as transparent with our prospects as we possibly can. And I know that there's, we've all heard the car salesperson say, hey, listen, if you don't want to buy it, that's absolutely fine. And who's ever heard that line from a salesperson? If you don't want it, that's cool. And then to only have the salesperson try some roundabout way to create the deal. So how sincere were they about you not buying their product? Typically not very sincere, right? But we want to build in a mindset at Sandler that no is actually good. Getting a no is actually okay. And as a matter of fact, I want the no as early in the sales process as possible. And why do I want that?
So you can get it out of the way.
Get out of the freaking way. There's too many salespeople who feel like that. Oh, no, I can make it work. You're working too hard. We want to make it easy. That's the objective, to make it easier. So let me hit the pause button as I pull up my share screen, and because I'm going to pop up a whiteboard here. And does anybody have any questions or thoughts as we get, a little bit deeper into this concept? All right. Now if I can get my keyboard to work properly or my mouse pad to work properly. There are 5 elements to an upfront contract. And if you guys want to write this down, you can. We will send it out. But you do want to get these locked and loaded. Whoops, not time. You want to get these locked and loaded into your brain. There are 5 elements to an upfront contract. Now, what will start to happen is, I'll give you a little bit of a warning, the purpose and the agendas sometimes blend. So sometimes there may be 4 elements, but be aware from Sandler learning perspective, there are 5 elements. If you call me to work on a sales, Robert's been around, I think, the longest on this. Well, actually, Peter, you've been around the longest, but Robert and I have had lots of conversations. Typically, when you call me and you're working on a deal, the first question I will ask you is, what's your upfront contract? And now that you guys all know it, if we're talking about a deal, you'll start to see that trend start to fit in. I want to know what your upfront contract is throughout the entire course of the sale. So there are 5 elements to the upfront contract, and they go in a specific order. We don't just put them out there arbitrarily in this direction because we think it's cool. They work psychologically really well in this order. So when I'm going into let's look at a first meeting. If I'm going into a first meeting, again, the purpose may blend into the buyer's agenda, but what we're typically doing is, hey, Bob, this first meeting, we'll get to know each other, we'll understand each other, and we'll see what's going on. We're on the phone. Maybe we're having a quick conversation to establish that first meeting and that first meeting time. If I'm getting my calendar out, I am understanding, and I'm probably asking Bob, hey, Bob, if we were to get together next Wednesday, let's talk about sales training for a second. Hey, Bob, Bob, would you mind role playing with me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bob, if we were to get together and talk about sales training next Wednesday, can I ask you a question? What are some things that you would want to hear about me or hear about Sandler?
I guess how long you've been doing it for, just to make sure you're worth your.
Listen, the last month has been great, so keep going.
What time you were thinking? You know, I'm a pretty busy guy, so I don't know what you were thinking, but I might be able to dedicate like a half hour or so.
Okay.
What would we be covering?
Well, what are some things that you would want to cover?
That's a good question. I guess I'd have to think about that. Mostly what you can offer, as far as sales training is concerned.
Okay.
Success rates, that sort of thing. That's what I would ask about.
Absolutely. Success rates make a lot of sense.
How are you different from Dale Carnegie and everybody else?
How am I different than the competition?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, those are all great things to talk about. So again, I'm calling him out randomly here, putting him on the spot. So thanks, Bob. I want to understand from my prospect what they want to hear from me in that meeting. Now, in a role play situation like this, here's the reality. We're not on a phone call. We just jumped in. But during a phone call, he's probably dripping a few things out. Like, hey, I've used Dale Carnegie in the past, or I really like Dale Carnegie, or I'm having trouble with prospecting. I am now building the buyer's agenda in advance of this meeting that could take place next Wednesday. Whose agenda am I building?
Theirs.
Who's the meeting all about?
Them.
It's all about him. So if I can create an atmosphere where he knows the meeting is me focusing on his items, I'm going to have a better outcome. Now, I have a spot. By the way, I'm being very tactical right here. This is a much more conversational item. But for starters, I want to start out very tactical here. So Bob's given me a few things to work with. Let's imagine if in a first meeting, I like to share with people, I don't like to share the history of Sandler in a first meeting. I like to share how we've helped some other companies. And Bob, you brought that up, but I'm going to imagine you didn't. I might say, hey, Bob, you might want to hear how we've helped some other salespeople in the space of prospecting. Would that be a good topic to talk about?
Yeah, no, it would be great.
So I have an opportunity to drip out what are the things that he should be asking from me in a first meeting. That gives me two things. It allows me to share the most key points of what should occur in a meeting. In addition, on the flip side, sometimes a prospect says, I'd really like to understand how much time and how much this is going to cost me, what the investment might be. That may be inappropriate. So by having the seller's agenda in the back end, if Bob had said to me, hey, I want to understand how much this stuff costs, I can say, hey, Bob, I know you're worried about cost, but before we even get there, that probably occurs in a second meeting if we even determine whether or not this makes sense and what's the right program for you. Does that sound reasonable? 100% of the time, 99.9% of the time, they say yes. Who's the meeting about?
Them.
Who's in control of the meeting?
You're giving it to them, but you really are.
Bingo, I am in control. So psychologically, I've let the prospect know that they're in control while actually controlling the entire process. Now,
Can I ask you-
Steve, jump in.
So right now, all of us, I don't know how long other people have been working with Sandler, but let's just pretend that this was everyone's first meeting because it's sort of mine. So we all have the things that we say now, right? And then you're adding little tidbits of sort of add to our presentation or our questioning or whatever. And so we slowly see how to utilize what you're adding to the pot. But how do we learn what to take out, that what we're doing now that's perhaps steering some things the wrong way?
It's a great question, and I'm sure Steve asked it a little bit differently than maybe others are thinking of it. So how do you take a look at what you're doing today and kind of figure out where the gaps are, what should be added and what should be removed from that process? So the first thing and why we write this down is, and I can send you guys a worksheet, is you want to look at these elements, and whatever meeting you are going out on, you want to make sure you've answered those questions. That's number one. So you actually want to use this as a filter against the meeting you have, whether it be a first meeting, a second meeting, a third meeting, it doesn't matter. So you want to filter against it. And then Steve, in a very much more complex answer, we want to start to look at your sales process. And what the upfront contract will do is say, you know what? Here's what, and what we're trying to do is blend in the Sandler process. We're very slowly doing that. What should occur in meeting 1? What should occur in meeting 2? What should occur in meeting 3? So if you are talking about price in a first meeting, and I'm going to look around the room, and I think this would apply to every one of us, maybe one or two of us a little bit differently. Price probably shouldn't be a topic of conversation in a first meeting. Probably. Don't hold me to that. That should be later down the road. So Steve, in a very easy way, that's how I would answer that question.
Okay, cool.
Use this as a filter, and then we got to look at your sales process. The upfront contract, and I will do a drawing. I'll make sure before we wrap up, I will draw out the upfront contract kind of in a sequence to start to formulate that thought in your brain. I'm going to, by the way, great question. Like, that's a super advanced question. Let me go out to this time element. Who struggles getting the appropriate amount of time from a prospect? Meaning either they can't give you enough time, you ask for 60 minutes, they give you 30, you need an hour, they'll give you, or you need 90, they'll give you 45, or they cut you off during the meeting and say, you know what, we're done here. Anybody ever run into that? Does that ever happen? Or Pete, it happens sometimes. Samir, it never happens to you, right? That's good.
Yeah, no, usually we like whatever time we need.
As I'm going to choke on my water. Brandon, ever happen in your world, in the estate planning world, where people are a little leery of how much time you're taking from them?
No, I think most people realize that you can't shut up attorneys, so they're expecting to spend a long time with that. But normally what we do is after we've confirmed the meeting, well, even before we've even scheduled the meeting, we're setting expectations and letting them know how much time to expect. So, and we tend to overestimate how much time that will take and say, hey, we're going to schedule this much time. It might take less, but we very rarely do we, like maybe once a month, we have someone say, hey, I don't have 60 minutes, I have 45, or I don't have 9 minutes, I have 60. And like once a quarter, we have someone like show up and say, hey, halfway through the meeting, oh, I have a call in 15 minutes. I was like, great, we have 45 minutes of things to talk about. That doesn't happen very often.
Okay, so if it's not happening, no problem. But if we want to, again, once again, level the playing field and make the buyer feel like this is all about them, if I've got their agenda and I've dripped in a couple of things that I've got, and I'm talking to Keith and I say, hey, Keith, for us to cover the items that you just talked about or that we just talked about, it's going to take blank amount of time, 45, 60, 90 minutes. What do you think the likelihood of a prospect saying, I don't have that amount of time is? We've just, what's that, Steve?
Low odds.
It's almost zero because we've just built the meeting about them. If you want to cover these items, we need this amount of time. So when you start to look at your sales process, we are starting to formulate the sales process around the prospect. By the way, most of my first meetings, depending upon the company and the size of the company, 20 minutes. Oh, typically less than 20, less than 30 minutes. Second meetings, 45 or 60 minutes. I am a one-trick pony, but my line is always the same. Based on the things that you and I just spoke about, we're going to need probably 45 minutes to cover that stuff. I'll have you out within 45 minutes. Prospects do not want you going over time. So I am very deliberate about saying, Brandon's eyes just got bigger. He goes, yeah. Prospects do not want you sucking up more of their time. So it's typically always less than 45, less than 60 minutes. Yes, Steve.
So we're using, NerdWise to set appointments for us, right? With digital marketing. And in one of the emails, we're saying to the person, hey, do you have 10 minutes on, X date? And sometimes those meetings go really well. They usually do. And you just sort of, should you keep on going or stop at 10 minutes?
So again, I'm kind of pretty consistent here. I am a look at the clock guy and go, hey, listen, we're coming up now. Listen, 10 minutes is a little bit of a challenge. Hey, we're at our 10-minute mark. We're 12 minutes in, and we had agreed to 10 minutes. I would typically move that to a next appointment, because as a salesperson, as a business development person, I've probably got somebody who's engaged and is willing to put me on their calendar. And in that 10-minute intro call, I probably identified enough of an agenda to say, hey, listen, here are some of the things that we spoke about. If we were to get back together, what else would you like to cover? I think I heard you say that you had a problem with this, this, and this. What else would you like to cover in the next meeting? Yes, Linda.
Couldn't you just ask for permission to continue speaking? Like if you're having a great conversation and they're engaged and they're, being positive, couldn't you say, listen, we're coming up on those 10 minutes. We can either reschedule to continue the conversation, or if you've got availability, I'm happy to stay online with you.
So I'm gonna contradict myself consistently, but I am in an introductory call. I'm gonna be pretty consistent here and not let it go too long. Because if I've got, and we'll talk about pain in 2 weeks, or maybe we'll get to it next week, but if I've got a little bit of pain and I've got somebody kind of sucked in, I'd rather move that to a next appointment, because my biggest fear is twofold. Especially early on in the sales process. Later on in the sales process, that's where I'll probably contradict myself. But early on, I want to keep the rapport going and be respectful that this person knows I don't suck up too much of their time. Because if I ask for a 45-minute meeting next time, they're going, this guy's going to be on with me for 60. So I don't want to set that trend. I want to set a trend of I am locked and loaded. That's number one. And number two, what do salespeople tend to do when they have too much time to talk? What, Keith?
Make it about themselves.
Price. They say too
Kids,
much.
shut up. We start talking about price and features and benefits and things that aren't supposed to come up early on. Back to Steven's question, how do I know I'm doing the wrong things? If I can control my process, step one looks like this, step two looks like this, I can stay within those controls. Guys, I know we're all different here. We all have great pros and cons. Some of us, not every one of us, will end up talking too much. And then by the end of that 10-minute call or 20-minute call, it's now 20, 25 minutes. And in the office, we're going, that was a 15-minute call. They let me stay there for 45 minutes. And then we never hear back from them because they know that this isn't the type of person. So I'm really in that early cycle, Linda. I am trying to be as contained as possible. I really want to control the process. And I think individually, as you guys are working on deals and we're having coaching calls and different conversations, we can talk about some of those conversations. Questions, comments, thoughts there? Like, are you guys going, what the hell is Dave talking about? Or we're cool?
Can I devil's advocate you for a second?
Of course, yeah, because you will, of course.
Okay, so we're trying to build a relationship with each person who we are, each center of influence or whoever that we're trying to meet. And so if we, let's pretend we were, not we were dating, meeting me and you, let's pretend we were all dating, we were all 20 years old and you met someone and you said, hey, let's go meet, you're introduced and you just say, hey, let's go get together for drinks for 15 minutes. If it's going really well, you're not like, well, we only agreed to 15 minutes. Where's the door? You're going to keep on, you're going to hang out because things are going well. So why isn't it the same here? It's building a relationship. It's the same thing.
Yeah, you're trying to do rapport building. My belief system is that you build, and I think there's a lot of equation of Sandler to dating. I think early on being respectful builds you more credibility with a prospect in the long run.
Okay. I'll try.
That is my belief system. And I think in the eyes of dating, actually, just imagine how much more in demand you might be if you said, hey, listen, great conversation. Would love to pick it up in a week, and how much more those two folks maybe would want to get together. I don't have a psychologist on today's call, but we have one in our 8:30 session. We could talk more about that. It's a great question. Let me bring us out to clear outcomes. So in the world of clear outcomes at Sandler, and by the way, most of you have experienced this. At Sandler, there are 3 clear outcomes: a no, a yes, or a clear next step. Now, let's focus specifically on the initial meeting, and then I'll do a quick diagram in a moment, and I'm going to blow through it, but I do want to get to it. Every initial sales call has 3 clear outcomes. Now, depending upon your business, some of us, some folks on this call, there is no yes in a first call. With my business, it's typically not a yes in a first call. That is beyond rare. But a no is always available. So when I've spoken to most of you on this call, I've said, hey, listen, here's what can happen at the end of the call. If it's a no, no problem. I can tell you no, you can tell me no. We can talk about all different ways to do that. But I am letting a prospect know that no is on the table and that they should feel absolutely comfortable letting me know that. Building rapport. Go back to the Friday night insurance salesperson. How do I get this person out of my house on a Friday night? When really the only thing in the way is Saturday morning. So they might spend the night out of my house if I haven't bought something from them. Yes. Now, some of us might have yes in our arsenal. I have one particular client that does home remodeling, and a yes is an opportunity. If your family decides to move forward with us, I will have a contract ready for you. In my world, here's how it sounds, and probably most of you can take this. Brandon, typically, people don't buy from me in a first meeting. If you are, for some reason you say you want to, we'll be ready to have that conversation, but that's probably not going to happen. I have just thrown him behind the pendulum. I've made him comfortable, hopefully through good rapport building. He's not going to get his arm twisted and get a, hey, you know what, if you do it by 6 o'clock tonight, I have a better price. I've taken all the pressure out. But more importantly, throughout the entire sales process, and as we learn Sandler, the steps, because people buy, you're not going to sell them. We don't have any trick closing techniques. Clear next step. If I have a, by the way, Brandon, I'll pick on you for a second. Clear next step. And Brandon had a gap and Samir had gaps. You guys had long gaps from start to finish. Clear next step. Did we ever hang up a call and you weren't on my calendar? That's a clear next step. So Peter, at the conclusion of the call, if we think there's potentially something here, we'll just get on our calendars and talk about getting that next moment or that next step on the calendar. So what do I never leave a sales call without?
Clear outcome.
Exactly. There is always a decision. If Brandon said to me, I'll call you in 2 weeks, again, Dave Trapani, following the Sandler process, I'm not going to tell you guys to do it. If Brandon said, hey, you know what, I'm not going to put you on the calendar, I'll call you in 2 weeks, I would say, Brandon, perfect. I will not call you. You're probably a no, because no one ever calls me back in 2 weeks. Either they put me on the calendar here. Back to Steven's question earlier, I know my sales process. In my world, if someone tells me they want to think about it, they're not buying. It is a rarity, and I do not want to build my business that way. I want to build my business with people who are willing to go on my calendar. Let me hit the pause button there. So if every moment I create those clear next steps, I always get the prospect on the line. And as we get better at this, what we will start to do is start to close more deals. Because it's not that there are some people who are just saying, hey, I'll call you back in a couple of weeks just to get out of there. There are some people who legitimately say, you guys work in complex worlds. They say, I'll call you back in 2 weeks. We just got so many things going on. And what happens is life. They get busy, they get sidetracked, and they don't do it on purpose. Our job is to control the process. Let me shut up for real this time. Questions or thoughts here?
It's kind of a question that I have is what was it, upfront contracts, right? Does this idea of purpose of the meeting, buyer's agenda, seller's agenda, time, clear outcomes, does that apply to not just the first meeting, but any successive meeting as well?
Yes, Brandon, that's a great question. And that's the diagram I quickly want to show you guys. So every iteration, let me do the verbal because we are going to run out of time, and then I'll try to draw it out as quickly as possible. Every iteration of the sales call always has clarity in it. So not only from meeting 1 to meeting 2 to meeting 3, and Brandon, when they become a client of yours, how you're following up with them becomes an upfront contract. That's one element. And also receiving a contract back. Hey, Linda, I'm sending you a contract. Instead of saying, can you send that back to me when you get a moment? I'm going to send you the contract. Can we get our calendars out? Because we'll probably need 15 minutes to review any questions that you have with the contract. So every little element, I always want to create clear next steps. And the feedback I will typically get from sales folks or sales groups is prospects never going to do that. They'll do it 100% of the time. Your best prospects do whatever you ask them to do because they're awesome people and you're in it together. They really do follow the lead. Now, let me take away the 100%. Sometimes deals are more complicated. Samir works pretty high level deals. Maybe not every one of those steps has super clarity. Maybe an NDA might have a little bit of difference, but we're going to attempt to do this throughout the entire sales process. Great question, Brandon. Super insightful and exactly the process that we need to follow. I want you guys, and I'm going to do it very, are you guys okay if we go over by like 3-4 minutes? Anybody have to drop at 11?
Yeah, I do, but it's okay.
I do. I have an 11 too. Sorry about that.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. And we got alarms going. We're going to pick up on this concept that Brandon just teed up for next week because I really want to do it live and I want to dig into it. Just imagine flying across the country and having multiple stops along the way. Every one of those stops has upfront contract assigned to it. That's what we'll draw out visually, exactly the question Brandon asked. Here's your homework. By the way, upfront contracts are used with prospects. We use them with our family, better conversations. We use them with our colleagues at work. I've given you a very literal translation of it. We'll talk about how do you just have a conversation building upfront contracts. Your first takeaway, the only takeaway that you should have from this week is every interaction you have with a prospect or with an existing client that needs a next step is to put that next step on the calendar. That's the only takeaway you have to worry about today. We will do some building blocks. By the way, Steven Zeiger has been doing that. Steve, how's it working?
Rather than me having I think maybe 20 people I've been able to, during the appointment, make the next one. And now I don't have to chase them down and lose people. So score 1 for Trappiani.
There you go. I'll take any points I can get. Let me stop the recording.
I'm going to go.
All right.